Shopify is a global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business and sell more with less effort thanks to the Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/redcircle, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/redcircle now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/redcircle.
Hello and welcome to Japan Explained. In the previous episode, we looked at the origins of ukiyo-e, the development of printing techniques, and the classical period in the history of ukiyo-e. We followed the works of some brilliant artists like Harunobu, Sharaku, and Utamaro and ended up in the late 18th century. So, if you didn't listen to it yet, be sure to check it out. This time, we look at ukiyo-e in the 19th and early 20th century. Many things are happening in Japan, affecting all aspects of daily life and culture, and ukiyo-e wasn't left out. The star of ukiyo-e in the early 19th century was Kunisada. He began his career by drawing tall and slender women similar to those in Utamaro prints. Then, inspired by Sharaku, he also made some actor prints, and since the ban on mica was lifted, they came out with shiny backgrounds. So, we can clearly see that people still loved these two types of prints. While ukiyo-e prints were made in other major cities such as Osaka and Kyoto, they retain a strong connection to Edo, the city of men ravaged by fires, epidemics, and natural disasters. To live each day as if it were the last one was an unofficial motto of the Edo people. Stingy in their daily lives, they spared no expense when it came to entertainment. As I mentioned in the previous episode, if all the pleasures of this world are fleeting, they thought we better enjoy them while we can. And in the 19th century, ukiyo-e continued to depict the transient world, as it had from the beginning. Prints depicting the pleasures of city life circulated and gained popularity far beyond the samurai capital. For people living in rural Japan, they were a glimpse of adult life. Of course, the authorities didn't like all this live for today mentality. Splurging in Yoshiwara and wasting time watching kabuki plays was bad enough, and hugely popular prints were promoting it. As one of the main media of the day, they didn't just advertise, they parodied, inspired, judged, and could easily get political. And while ukiyo-e was always subjected to censorship, it became stricter as the Tokugawa government began to crumble. Prints of actors and beauties were not favored by the government, and as the regulations made it more difficult to produce these prints, new genres of ukiyo-e became popular around the 1830s: landscapes, warrior prints, and birds and flowers. But although the genres changed, the spirit of ukiyo-e was not abandoned. As for the warrior prints, Utagawa Kuniyoshi was the master of them. In 1842, during the tightened censorship regulations of the tempo reforms, prints of courtesans, geisha entertainers, and kabuki actors were completely banned. However, prints with historical themes were allowed, and so images of warriors, historical figures, events, and legends became the main output of many artists. Kuniyoshi understood that as long as the actors could not be identified, one could try to fool the censors. So he removed the stage from his works and made kabuki scenes look as if they were just scenes from the story. Or if it's cats instead of people, it doesn't count, does it? Kuniyoshi also created several series of beautiful women in the guise of famous characters from Japanese legends. In 1852, he went even further and used the products, mostly sea creatures of different provinces, as backgrounds within the pictures of beautiful women. As I briefly mentioned in the second part of the Yokai Explained episode, he was also very good at depicting the supernatural, possibly even using monsters as a way of expressing political criticism. but they are mythical creatures, so that should be okay too, right? When it comes to landscapes, there are two names that simply can't be avoided: Hokusai and Hiroshige. The man we know now as the great Katsushika Hokusai began his career as an artist of the Katsukawa school, making actor prints. It wasn't until the age of 40 that he was recognized for a series of picture books called Hokusai manga, published in 1811. And while manga today means comic books, Hokusai's manga doesn't have a story. Instead, it's an extensive multi-volume collection of sketches. In later years, Hokusai would describe himself as an old man crazy about art. Well, he was always mad about it. He drew everything in his sketchbooks: people in various poses, animals, plants, insects, furniture, tools, everyday objects, the list goes on. Crazy about art and determined to constantly improve it, he experimented. As a young man, he studied Western painting, and we see linear perspective in his paintings. When a new synthetic pigment came to Japan, he was eager to use it in his work as soon as it was affordable. This pigment is known to us as Prussian blue, but Hokusai knew it as a berorin no ai, as it came to Japan from Germany. The pigment was first brought to Japan in 1829, and the first artist to use it was actually not Hokusai, but Eisen. In the 1830s, the price of Berlin blue decreased and its popularity skyrocketed. The dark, opaque blue revolutionized landscape printmaking because it allowed a wide range of tones and could be mixed with other colors. The other advantage of Prussian blue was its brightness, which didn't fade with time. The famous Great Wave and many other seascapes in Hokusai's prints would not have been even possible without it. Unlike Utamaro and Sharaku, Hokusai progressed with each work. Little known in his youth, he finally gained recognition in his 40s. By the time he was 70, he was famous, and his series of 36 views of Mount Fuji, started in 1830, became the best-selling print series of all time. In fact, it was so popular that 10 additional prints were added, making a total of 46 designs. But just a few years later, another series beats the popularity of views of Mount Fuji. These were the 53 Stations of the Tokaido by Hiroshige, a young artist still in his 30s. The series was so popular that it was reprinted several times, and different versions of the prints were made to suit different customers. One of the reasons for its popularity was probably the traveling boom that was taking place in Japan at the same time. In the late 18th century, the country's main highways, such as the Tokaido and Nakasendo, had been greatly improved, increasing commercial traffic and encouraging people to travel. This, in turn, created a demand for scenic color prints of famous views and prominent places. People needed guidebooks and souvenir postcards, and Ukiyo-e prints were the answer. Before drawing the designs of the Tokaido series, Hiroshige made a trip to Kyoto himself. Then, back in Edo, he drew not only famous views, but also popular restaurants, particularly difficult parts of the road, or the services available at each station. This was valuable information for the first-time traveler. In the 1850s, Hiroshige undertook another major project to paint 100 views of Edo. His son-in-law, Hiroshige II, finished the series when the great master died in 1858. Sadly, none of these great artists lived to see the chaos of the last days of the shogunate and the rapid modernization of Japan that followed. But their students did. In 1859, the port of Yokohama was officially open to foreign trade. Americans, soon followed by British, French, and Russians, came to the city to trade and travel, and ukiyo-e artists began to portray them. These pictures of foreigners became known as Yokohama-e, and the artists who made them faced many problems, such as how to make foreigners look foreign or how to draw their clothes. Partly because of these problems and partly because the prints were often produced very quickly and with little care to meet the high demand from the public that lacked the quality previously seen in Japanese prints. Compositions were often copied from other works with only minor changes or the simple addition of a title or explanatory note. A few years later, when the Meiji period starts, artists are allowed to depict current events. We'll see some great prints of the Boshin War and scenes from the daily lives of ordinary people, which were becoming more and more westernized. But the same wave of westernization caused ukiyo-e to slowly decline, replaced by photography and the printing press. Nearly dead in Japan, ukiyo-e was rescued in Europe. Sometimes it even found its way to Europe as packaging for lacquerware and ceramics. Japanese sellers didn't see much value in old, discolored, or damaged prints and illustrated book pages, using them as we use newspapers today to protect fragile objects. But when the goods were unwrapped in the West, people were fascinated by the unusual composition of the prints. Japanese prints offered Western artists a new approach to art. It didn't have to be photographic, it turned out. It could be stylized and impressionistic. Instead of trying to create the illusion of space beyond the flat surface of the canvas, Japanese prints just emphasized the surface itself. In 1867, ukiyo-e became the center of attention at the Paris exhibition. The excellence of the polychrome prints amazed the Europeans who saw ukiyo-e as outstanding works of art. Admiration for Japanese art and culture soon spread throughout Europe, giving rise to the Japonism movement. Van Gogh was fascinated by the vivid colors, strong lines, and bold compositions of ukiyo-e. He even painted copies of two works from Hiroshige's 100 Famous Views of Edo. By producing Hiroshige's bold use of foreground and background composition, Van Gogh set out to create a groundbreaking new style of his own. He also had a collection of Japanese prints in his studio and once wrote to his brother, "Dear Theo, I want to paint this room in a Japanese manner. The shadows and cast shadows are left out and it is painted in bright flat tints like the Japanese prints. In a way, all my work is founded on Japanese art." As much as Van Gogh found Japan and Japanese culture fascinating, he didn't understand a thing about it. He used kanji characters to decorate his copies of Hiroshige's works and surrounded them with an advertisement for a brothel in a red light district of Edo. 100 Views of Edo also inspired James Whistler. Nocturne, Blue and Gold, Old Battersea Bridge is pretty much a copy of Hiroshige's print Kyobashi Takegashi. Quite different qualities of Japanese prints inspired Claude Monet. In an interview published in June 1909 in the Gazette de Beaux Arts, Claude Monet said, "If you absolutely must find an affiliation for me, put me with the Japanese of old. The refinement of their taste has always appealed to me, and I approve of the suggestions of their aesthetic, which evokes the presence by the shadow, the whole by the fragment." Inspired by ukiyo-e, he created a Japanese garden at his house in Giverny. He transformed a small existing pond into an Asian-influenced water garden and added Japanese-style wooden bridge. He then began painting the pond and its water lilies, and never stopped. Edgar Degas thought the Japanese prints had a cool composition, sometimes cutting off objects, people, and even the main characters of the painting. He also loved Hokusai sketches and the human poses of them and used them in his paintings. Now Japanese prints began to be collected by connoisseurs and a wider knowledge of them was stimulated by Edmond de Gaucoin's monographs on Hokusai and Utamaro and the works of Professor Ernest Fenollosa, who helped to build up collections of Japanese art for the Imperial Museum in Tokyo. At the turn of the century, large sums were paid for rare impressions. By the year 1905, in Japan, ukiyo-e prints had been replaced by photographs, postcards, and newspapers. But following the appreciation in the West in the 1910s, several publishers started to market ukiyo-e prints as art. They offered subscription sets. Each month, the customer would receive a set of prints, usually 2-4 at a time, with some information about the artist and the history of ukiyo-e. The aim was to collect representative prints from each artist and period. Sometimes the packs also included a card, and if you collected a number of them, you could exchange them for a storage case for your collection. The reproductions of this period are somewhat different from the classical ukiyo-e, but in a good way. Since they were more expensive, they were printed on a soft, thick washi paper with extremely rich colors and blacker outlines than usual. Unlike the mass-produced prints of the old days, the registration marks on these newer reprints are almost always perfect. They really do look like luxurious art. Around the same time, we see the rise of the new artistic movement, Shinhanga, new woodblock prints. As for classical ukiyo-e, its history was pretty much over. Slowly, the prints gained recognition in Japan. Now they can be seen in museums all over the country, carefully protected from the light that destroys the natural pigments, and the discovery of an old woodblock is a rare, happy, and newsworthy event. An area of Nihonbashi where many publishing houses flourished during the Edo period and where Hiroshige spent the last years of his life has been transformed with ukiyo-e prints on shop shutters. Colorful regional license plates for cars often feature ukiyo-e, and in 2020 ukiyo-e even found their way into Japanese passports. Hokusai's 36 views of Mount Fuji are now used as the background for the immigration stamps pages to prevent forgery. So, even after 350 years, they are still very popular and very contemporary. Now that we've looked at the colorful history of ukiyo-e, I feel like I got one thing wrong. I told you at the beginning and repeated later that ukiyo-e prints were not considered art objects and that making prints was a team effort. Yes, the name of the famous artist on the prints made them sell better, but it's the prints that made these artists known in the first place. Mention this and then follow the same narrative as most books on ukiyo-e. I've talked mainly about artists and artistic techniques, and now it's time to make up for that. So let's have a look at the process of making an ukiyo-e print. First of all, we need a publisher. It's his job to find and pay artists, carvers, and printers to decide what will sell at what is a waste of money. And it's also the publisher's job to find businesses willing to advertise on the prints, be they shops, restaurants, textile manufacturers, or just a kabuki actor launching his beauty line. Once the money is raised, the publisher hires an artist. And the first thing the artist does is a line drawing in black ink. The sketch goes to the publisher, and if he's happy with the result, he sends it to the shogun's censor. If everything is in order, the work receives the stamp of approval. After approval, the original image goes to the carver. He glues it face down on a block of wood, usually cherry, sewn in direction of the grain, and carves the outline. The result of his work is known as the key block. The size of this block was determined mainly by the size of the tree from which it was taken, so the thickness of the tree was the limit. Larger prints were made using multiple blocks, usually arranged as a triptych, but there are examples of 2, 5, 12, or even 20 prints arranged as a fold-out album. Cherry or sakura wood was used for the blocks because it has a very dense grain, which makes it possible to carve extremely fine lines. The carvers often specialized in certain parts of the images, such as hair or kimono designs. They were incredibly skilled. They could carve lines as fine as 0.1 millimeter, or in the case of hair, 3 hairs could fit into 1 millimeter. Nowadays, some of these techniques can no longer be reproduced, and it should probably explain to you why sometimes the name of a particularly skilled carver was even mentioned on the print. When the key block was finished, a few prints were made and sent back to the artist, who would now take his brush and no, he wouldn't color them, he would just take them one by one and with red ink mark the areas that should be colored the same. Back to the cover, the pages marked by an artist are now carved into coloring blocks. One for red, one for green, one for yellow, and so on. To align all the blocks, the cover adds registration marks. Later, when the paper is lined up with these marks during printing, the different colors will also be lined up. Finally, the blocks go to the printer. He takes the first block and applies pigment with a smaller brush, then uses a larger brush to spread it evenly. Then he places the sheet on washi paper in line with the registration marks and rubs it down with a pressing pad called baren. At this point, you might ask, why rub? It's supposed to be printing, right? Well, in the Edo period, rubbing was printing. Surimono, sumizuri-e, beni-zuri-e, all these types of prints have one part in common, suri, which comes from the verb suru, to rub or to print. And the reason for this is Japanese washi paper. It is made from a mulberry tree that produces extremely long fibers. Printers use this rubbing technique to press water-based pigments directly into fibers, so that when they are finished, there is no ink left on the surface of the paper. The print was made color by color. Each block would be printed about 200 times at a time and then left to rest and dry. That's the ideal scenario though. Some very popular prints, such as those in Hiroshige's Tokaido series, were heavily overworked, so that the lines blurred and the markings became loose and the dampened wood lost its shape. Finally, if mica or metal powder was to be used, it would be applied by hand at the very end, using the cutout form to hide the main image. Then, and only then, would the print be ready for sale. As you can see, the artist got the most fame, but many other people of great skill worked to make something as cheap and disposable as ukiyo-e prints. So I hope that this episode will not only help you appreciate ukiyo-e as the people of Edo did, but also make you stop for a moment and think about the amount of work and resources that go into the things we treat as trivial or disposable. I'll leave you with that. Please share your thoughts with me on social media or at japanexplained.com, where you'll also find additional notes on the episode. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye!
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. That's ziprecruiter.com/zip. ziprecruiter.com/zip.